There comes a moment when you realize that continuing the same way will cost you more than changing ever could. A moment when exhaustion stops feeling normal and starts feeling like a warning. If you've been giving endlessly, shrinking quietly, and telling yourself, next year I'll rest, this is that year. 2026 is not about becoming selfish. It's about finally choosing yourself without guilt, without apology, and without waiting for permission. There comes a point when continuing the same way becomes more painful than changing, not because you failed, but because you finally see the cost. 2026 is not about becoming selfish. It's about becoming honest about how often you've put yourself last. Honest about how much energy you've spent meeting expectations that were never yours. Honest about the quiet exhaustion that comes from always choosing everyone else first. This is the year you stop calling self-neglect kindness and start calling self-respect what it truly is, necessary. Putting yourself first doesn't happen all at once. It begins with awareness. You start noticing how often your needs come second, how frequently you ignore your body's signals, silence your intuition, and dismiss your own boundaries. These moments don't feel dramatic, but they accumulate. Over time, they teach you to disappear from your own life. For years, you may have believed that being strong meant enduring, that love meant sacrifice without limits, that rest was something you earned only after exhaustion. But strength that costs you your well-being is not strength, it's survival, and survival is no longer enough. This year invites you to shift from surviving to living, from reacting to choosing, from shrinking to honoring who you are becoming. Putting yourself first will challenge old identities. The one who was always available, the one who never said no, the one who held everything together while quietly falling apart. These roles once protected you, but they no longer serve the life you are meant to build. Growth requires release, and release often feels like loss before it feels like freedom. You may fear that prioritizing yourself will push people away. In truth, it reveals who respects you and who benefited from your silence. Some relationships will shift, some expectations will dissolve, and some attachments will no longer survive your clarity. This is not failure, it is alignment. When you put yourself first, you stop negotiating your worth. 2026 is not about becoming a different person. It's about returning to yourself, about choosing rest without guilt, boundaries without apology, and direction without explanation. This is the year you stop abandoning yourself to keep the peace and start building a life where your well-being is the foundation, not the afterthought. Putting yourself first in 2026 requires confronting a truth you may have avoided for years. People-pleasing has been costing you more than you realized. It cost you energy you never recovered, time you never got back, emotional space that was never replenished. You didn't choose people-pleasing because you were weak. You chose it because you wanted harmony, safety, and acceptance. But over time, that choice quietly trained you to place your own needs last. People-pleasing often disguises itself as kindness, responsibility, or loyalty. You tell yourself you're being understanding, flexible, easygoing, yet beneath that surface is a pattern of self-erasure. You say yes when your body says no. You stay quiet when something hurts. You over-explain, over-give, and overextend, hoping it will make things smoother. What it actually does is teach others that your limits are negotiable. The emotional cost shows up slowly. You feel drained after interactions that should feel neutral. Resentment creeps in, not because others ask too much, but because you never allowed yourself to say enough. You begin to feel invisible in your own life, unsure of what you want because your attention has been focused outward for so long. This is not a flaw in your character. It's a signal that something needs to change. Putting yourself first means recognizing that your needs are not an inconvenience. They are information. When you ignore them, your body and mind find other ways to get your attention through exhaustion, irritability, anxiety, or numbness. These aren't signs that you're failing. They're signs that you've been carrying more than your share for too long. In 26, you begin to redefine kindness. You learn that being kind does not require self-betrayal, that empathy does not mean self-neglect, That generosity without boundaries eventually turns into burnout. You start choosing honesty over harmony, even when your voice shakes. You begin letting discomfort exist instead of absorbing it all yourself. The moment you stop people-pleasing, your life doesn't fall apart, it becomes clearer. Some people adjust, some resist, and some reveal that they were never comfortable with you having boundaries at all. This clarity is not cruel, it's necessary. Putting yourself first means finally acknowledging that your well-being matters just as much as anyone else's, and in 2026, that truth becomes non-negotiable. Putting yourself first in 2026 means learning one of the hardest skills for people who care deeply, saying no without explaining yourself into exhaustion. For a long time, no may have felt like rejection, selfishness, or failure. But the truth is, no is simply clarity. It is the moment you stop negotiating your limits in hopes of being understood. Guilt often appears when you begin setting boundaries because your nervous system is used to overfunctioning. You've been conditioned to believe that your value comes from availability, responsiveness, and sacrifice. When you say no, it can feel like you're doing something wrong, even when you're doing something necessary. This discomfort doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you're unlearning a pattern that once kept you safe. Saying no does not require a long explanation. You don't owe your time, energy, or emotional labor to everyone who asks. When you begin to pause before responding, you reclaim choice. Instead of reacting out of habit, you respond with intention. This shift creates space to rest, to reflect, and to decide what truly deserves your attention. You may notice that some people push back when you say no. Not because your boundary is unreasonable, but because they were comfortable with you having none. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. In 2026, you stop measuring your decisions by how they make others feel and start measuring them by how they affect your peace. Learning to say no strengthens your relationship with yourself. Each time you honor your limits, you build trust internally. That trust reduces anxiety and self-doubt. You begin to feel steadier, less reactive, and more present. Your energy stops leaking into places that don't support your growth. Saying no doesn't close doors, it redirects you toward the life you actually want. In 2026, you learn that guilt fades, but self-respect lasts. And once you experience the calm that comes from honoring your limits, you no longer feel the need to explain your worth to anyone. Putting yourself first in 2026 means confronting a belief you may have lived by for years, that rest must be earned, that slowing down is only allowed after everything is finished, everyone is satisfied, and nothing is left undone. This belief quietly keeps you in a state of urgency, where your nervous system never truly relaxes. You may be physically resting, but internally you remain alert, braced, and on edge. This is not rest, it is recovery, delay. When you live in constant urgency, your body forgets what calm feels like. You move quickly, think ahead, and anticipate problems before they exist. Over time, this state becomes familiar, even addictive. You begin to equate busyness with purpose and exhaustion with progress. But in truth, a regulated nervous system is the foundation of clarity, creativity, and emotional stability. Putting yourself first requires learning how to slow your body, not just your schedule. You start paying attention to how often you hold your breath, tense your shoulders, or rush through moments meant to be neutral. Small pauses become powerful. Deep breaths, quiet walks, unstructured time, these are not luxuries. They are signals to your system that you are safe enough to rest. In 26, you stop glorifying burnout. You stop pushing through fatigue as if it proves something. You begin listening to your body with respect instead of resistance. Rest becomes proactive rather than reactive. You rest before you break, before you snap, before you disconnect from yourself again. As your nervous system settles, your decisions improve. You respond instead of react. You notice your intuition more clearly. You feel less pulled by urgency and more guided by intention. Slowing down does not make you fall behind. It brings you back into alignment with what actually matters. Rest is not quitting. It is recalibration. In 2026, you learn that protecting your energy is an act of self-respect. not weakness. And as you give yourself permission to slow down, your life begins to feel less like a race and more like something you are meant to inhabit fully. Putting yourself first in 2026 means choosing yourself emotionally, even when it feels unfamiliar. For a long time, you may have been more attuned to other people's moods than your own. You learn to sense shifts in energy, anticipate needs, and adjust yourself to keep things stable. Over time, this habit trained you to abandon your emotional truth in favor of emotional management. Choosing yourself now means no longer carrying what was never yours to hold. Emotional self-prioritization begins with permission to feel what you feel without minimizing it. Permission to take space when something hurts instead of pushing through it. You stop explaining away your emotions to make others comfortable. You stop questioning whether your feelings are valid enough to be acknowledged. In 26, you begin treating your emotional experience as real and worthy of care. You may notice guilt arise when you stop over-functioning emotionally, when you don't rush to soothe, fix, or absorb discomfort for others. This guilt is not a signal that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are breaking a long-standing pattern. Emotional boundaries can feel uncomfortable at first, but they are what allow genuine connection to exist without self-erasure. Choosing yourself emotionally also means letting go of relationships that depend on you abandoning yourself. Some connections were built on imbalance, where your emotional labor kept everything afloat. When you step back, those dynamics may change or dissolve. This can feel painful, but it is also clarifying. You begin to see which relationships honor mutual presence and which ones relied on your constant emotional availability. As you prioritize your inner world, you feel more grounded and less reactive. Your emotions no longer dictate your behavior, nor are they suppressed. They are acknowledged, processed, and respected. This creates emotional stability, not by avoiding feelings, but by giving them appropriate space. Putting yourself first emotionally doesn't harden you, it softens you in the right places. In 2026, you learn that caring for yourself is not abandonment of others, it is the foundation of honest connection. And as you stop apologizing for your emotional needs, you step into a version of yourself that feels whole, steady, and deeply aligned. Putting yourself first in 2026 is not a momentary decision, it is a daily commitment. It is choosing again and again to live with intention rather than habit. After years of putting yourself last, it can feel unfamiliar to center your own well-being, but familiarity is not the same as alignment. What once felt normal may no longer feel right, and that discomfort is a sign of growth, not failure. Commitment to yourself shows up in small, consistent ways, in the pause before you agree to something, in the moment you choose rest instead of pushing through, in the decision to listen to your intuition even when it contradicts old patterns. These choices may not look dramatic from the outside, but they quietly reshape your life from the inside out. In 26, you stop waiting for permission to live differently. You recognize that no one else can prioritize your well-being for you. Responsibility replaces resentment. You become more honest with yourself about what you can sustain, what you need to release, and what deserves your energy moving forward. Living differently means accepting that growth will not always be comfortable. Some days you will second-guess your boundaries. Some days you will miss the approval you used to receive. But over time, self-trust grows stronger than the need for validation. You begin to measure success by how grounded you feel rather than how much you accomplish or please. As you integrate everything you've learned, boundaries, rest, emotional clarity, and self-respect, your life begins to feel more stable. Not because problems disappear, but because you are no longer abandoning yourself in the process of navigating them. You become your own safe place. Decisions feel clearer. Relationships feel more honest. Your energy feels protected.